Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast this week. I'm so excited you're here, as I always am. Thank you so much for listening. Before we jump into the topic this week, which I will share right now, is going to be about the 5 ways to honor yourself without shame or guilt. And I really wanted to do a topic like this because I feel like when people think about taking care of themselves, honoring themselves, doing what they want to do, having what they want, knowing what they want, or any of the above, a lot of what comes into play is shame and or guilt, which is what ends up contorting them into a certain version of themselves that just, doesn't really end up being a version of themselves that they really love, or it doesn't be a version of themselves that they feel like is truly themselves, or it ends them in a place where they don't even know who they are or don't even know what they want. And so over time, when we think about honoring ourselves or being ourselves or having what we want or doing what we want or caring for our own selves over other people, whether that's a child, a parent, a friend, a colleague, a spouse, it gets kind of everything's in this topic or this area gets sort of mixed in together and ends up becoming this just pile of shame and guilt. And so I wanted to talk through 5 ways to honor yourself without shame or guilt so that you can really lean into honoring yourself without feeling like you're being selfish, which, by the way, I do have a podcast on. So, and of course, without the feelings of shame or guilt. Like if you go do something you want to do and it's not necessarily with another person or it's not necessarily something that somebody else might want you to do, you might end up not enjoying it because you feel shame or guilt. And there's a lot in this category, which I'm going to get into. But let's put that on a hold for just 1 second. And what I would love for you to do, if you're listening to this, my guess is you're listening for some reason because you want to think about living a life that you really want and love, and you're thinking about alignment for your life. You're thinking about what it is you want to do next for this kind of second half of your life. But you're also in this place of like wanting those things because you know something's not quite right for you right now. And so what I want to do is invite you to take this quiz that I created, which identifies what area of your life you are abandoning yourself. And not only does it show you the area, because you know how sometimes you take those quizzes and you're like, it tells you something about yourself. You're like, yeah, okay, cool, great. Now what do I do? So I really wanted to provide some action steps you could take to start moving in this more alignment, more authenticity, more of getting what you want, more of knowing what you want. But by first identifying where you're out of alignment and then what to do from there. So I give you a day by day, 7 days in a row. You don't have to do them in a row, of course, but I wanted to provide at least some stepping stones to getting you to a different place instead of just telling you where you're out of alignment and leaving you with that. So go check it out. It's www.melissacoloton.com backslash quiz backslash. If I totally butchered that, it'll be in the show notes. So just go grab it in the show notes. Okay. All right. Back to the show. So where I think people get hung up on honoring themselves and they decide not to honor themselves or they struggle to honor themselves. And when I talk about honoring themselves, I hear a lot of but Melissa, I got kids, but Melissa, I got a demanding job, and who am I to just take a week off to myself and have a staycation, or who am I to, not answer my boss's email at, 7:30 p.m. at night, or when I talk about honoring yourself and people don't think that they can or don't think that they should, they say things even just like, I can't just fill in the blank, right? I can't just go have dinner by myself without my family. I can't just ask my husband to drop the kids off to work because I work from home and he doesn't. It's easier for me than it is him. I can't just go to the gym in the middle of the day. My boss will fill in the blank. So there's a lot of just, when it comes to honoring yourself, there's a lot of this, I can't just fill in the blank. And that's the reasoning for not being able to really honor what you want to do. Or the last one that I have on my list here is, a lot of people will tell me, but I have responsibilities, Melissa. So those are sort of my, list of rebuttals people give me when I talk about really honoring themselves. And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And how does that feel? And, I get it, right? Like nothing in life is done or to be considered without any sort of consideration of anything else in your life, right? Like if you have a family, if you have a job, if you have friends, if you have a career, if you have whatever you have, there's going to be anything that you try to make your life better, you could blame those other things for not being able to have what you want or do what you want, etc. Right? So that's fine. If you want to use those excuses, I say go for it. But what I'm here to tell you is that I don't think you should let those excuses get in the way of honoring yourself because, quite frankly, it's just that. It's an excuse. Where there's a will, there's a way. I always say that. And there's always going to be something in our way of doing the thing that we want to do. So we can either use the thing that's getting in our way as an excuse, or we can figure out how to go around it and not just let it get in our way. So I do get it though. I really do. And I always use this example of, when I decided to start my own business and I have a husband and I have the income in the family. I was the breadwinner. And so obviously going and starting my own business is inevitably going to result in less income, especially at the start, because you go from getting a paycheck automatically every 2 weeks to having to go generate your own revenue. So, did I consider him before I honored myself? To some degree. I couldn't completely disregard him, but I had made the decision to go out on my own before I went through a huge rigmarole of him giving me permission to do it. It was more about, I'm doing this, let's figure out together how to do it together, right? So I do get it, but at the same time, at some point, you have to think about what it is you want and what it is you desire, and then do your purpose, which is fulfilling your soul's desires. And if you do that, then ultimately it kind of does sort of take a lot of people and things out of the equation, because putting people and other things in the equation is what keeps us from honoring ourselves, which keeps us from our purpose, fulfilling our soul's desires, right? So, and if this is your first time listening, I just wanted to share really quickly what my definition of honoring yourself is. Honoring yourself to me means recognizing, respecting, and responding to your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual needs without abandoning yourself and despite external pressures or societal norms. And I know that's a mouthful, which is why I talk a lot about how that even comes to life, right? It's why my podcast is how it is, because I want to plug it into different scenarios and different places like relationships, careers, your own spiritual journey, like all these different places that honoring yourself plugs in. And that's why I have the podcast so much, is because I want to talk about these different facets and where it exists so we can sort of dissect it a little bit. Okay, so let's get on to the ideas again of the 5 ways to honor yourself without shame or guilt. And again, I want to talk about this because I really do believe it is one of the probably the top two things that sort of fall into a very similar category that keep people from honoring themselves, which keeps them from living the life they truly want to live, which keeps them from their purpose, aka fulfilling your soul's desires. So the more you dishonor yourself, the more you get out of alignment, the more you make decisions based on what everybody else wants for you, the more you don't recognize yourself, the more you don't have the life you want, the more you feel completely contorted, exhausted, not at peace. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And the reason I know this is because for years, I sat in a space where I kept asking myself, what is my purpose? And I kept trying to come up with this one thing. When in reality, what I was missing was the relationship with myself to know what it is that I wanted, to know what it was that my soul desired so that I could go fulfill that and that be my purpose, right? So this is absolutely a place and a space where people get completely off track and then they find themselves in that kind of like mid 30s onward, not happy, not fulfilled, feeling like they're like, am I even doing the right thing? Like that goes through your head a lot. And so I really wanted to talk about this because I don't want there to be things that get in your way of honoring yourself, because honoring yourself is going to just be the thing that really gets you to a place where you feel really good about what you're doing. You feel really good about who you're in relationship with. You feel really good about your life as a whole, and it gets you to a place of like just authenticity. Like, this is who I really am. And the only way to do that, the only access point is honoring yourself, right? Because if you don't know how to honor yourself, then you don't know what you want. And then you wake up one day and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I married to this person? Why am I doing this career? These friends aren't even cool to me. They're mean to me. You know, like I could go on and on and on. Why do I have kids that just don't even like me? Right? So there's all sorts of things in our life that end up being the symptoms of not honoring ourselves. Okay. So I want to address the ways in which you can honor yourself without shame or guilt. So yeah, let's just get into it. The first way to honor yourself without shame or guilt is to communicate. And the reason I say this, and by the way, please do not interpret communication as permission. You are not getting permission from other people to honor yourself. In fact, you need your own inner permission to honor yourself more than anything. Okay. The reason I say communicate is because I could see a place where someone wakes up one day and is kind of sick of their life and they're sick of the relationship they're in, let's just say. And they're sick of never feeling like they have time alone. Okay. And I guess that's not necessarily the relationship they're in, but maybe the experience they're having in their relationship where they're always the person taking care of the kids. They're always the one cooking. They're always the one cleaning. They're always the one picking the kids up from school and dropping them off and taking them to their friend's house, and they're picking them up from their sports, and they're doing this and they're doing that. And they feel exhausted because they have no time to themselves. And so if that person just said, you know what, screw it, and they silently were mad, and they just started not picking the kids up from school, not making dinners, not cleaning the house, and just didn't communicate about it, what would happen? Right? The kids wouldn't be picked up for school, the house wouldn't be clean, the dinners wouldn't be made, the laundry wouldn't be done. And then what would happen? There would be fights that would be included, depending on what relationship that person's, if they have a spouse or a partner, or maybe they rely on their mom and dad for some support, right? So somebody would have to pick up the slack and there would be no communication about it. It would cause more problems. And then what would happen? Then the person who decided to start honoring themselves without communicating would get resentful to the fact that they're doing what they want and now everybody's mad at them. Right? So we have to communicate about this stuff, right? Like we have to share with somebody, hey, listen, I really need some alone time, my friend, my spouse, my partner, my mom and dad, whoever it is. And here's what I'm thinking. And I'd like to talk about this together so that we can make it work. Here's what I'm thinking. maybe every Tuesday night, I plan a fun night out with my girlfriends, and you pick up the kids, you make dinner, you get it all sorted out and figured out. Are you cool with that? I'd like to think the partner, the spouse, the parents, the whoever are in agreement with that. And you make the agreement and bibbity bobbity boop. Now you have more time for yourself. So it's really important to communicate your needs and your desires with the people in your life. And please, please, please do not mistake in this as you're going around asking for permission all over the place, because that'll land you in a resentment hotel. Okay, we're not asking for permission. We are stating what we need and asking for help and communicating that this is what we need, this is what needs to happen, and here we go. All right, so that's the first one. The second way that you can honor yourself without shame or guilt is to ask for help. So this sits in a little bit of what I just said, but you have to ask for help. Like you can't do life completely alone. And you know, I don't like to really go in this direction of feeling like you need somebody or you need somebody. Like we don't want to get into the kind of this codependent situation, but certainly if you're trying to honor yourself and there's something you're really struggling with, let's just say, you're really struggling with keeping the bank account or the finances straightened out, right? In order to honor yourself, you have to see like, okay, like this is stressing me out. So you're honoring yourself because you're paying attention to the stress. You're honoring yourself because you know mentally you don't have the capacity to deal with the finances the way you need to. And so what do? Do you just keep drudging on, and every time you look at your bank account, you're stressed out, you're frustrated, you're irritated, or do you go and ask for help, right? So I think honoring yourself without shame or guilt is very, very useful, or asking for help can be very, very useful with the idea of honoring yourself without shame or guilt. The third one is just getting clear on your needs. And then therefore you can plan ahead, and going back to number one, communicating, right? So one of the reasons people don't honor themselves is because they kind of just keep doing what they've always done without question. They do what they're asked to do. They do what they're not asked to do. Like some people do so much. And like I had a friend of mine recently told me that she was doing these things, and someone asked her, who asked you to do that? And she was like, nobody, right? So sometimes we're even doing stuff we're not even asked to do. And when that happens, we kind of just go with the flow. It's sort of like a bad river we're on. We're just going with the flow down the river. We're not even considering our own needs. We're not even thinking about it. Like, and if we do think about it, it's at a time where we're having like a breakdown, like we're crying and sobbing, like, oh, I can't do this. Like, right. And so we let it pile up. And when it piles up, then we break down, and then we don't have any outlet for that. So getting clear on your needs is really important, because then it can take it back to number one, which is communicate, and back to number two, which is ask for help, right? So if we're going to get clear on our needs, what we need to do is therefore pay attention to when we're getting kind of irritated here and there. We're starting to get resentment, and that's starting to build up. And so then we realize, nope, I need to take a break. I need to take a rest. I need to go to the gym. I need to eat healthier. I need someone's help picking the kids up twice a week, right? If things are feeling off or out of whack or not great, it's a sign that something needs to change. And of course, because I believe in what I believe, something needs to give where you're honoring yourself, right? So get clear on your needs, even if you have to spend a few minutes just writing down what it is you need and then figuring out which ones you can actually ask for help on. The other one is share on your terms versus everyone else's terms. So what do I mean by that? So sharing on your terms versus everyone else's terms So when we get into a place where we're sharing or helping or doing or any of the above, I guess, but when we're sharing on our own terms, that means that we are doing things for other people, or we are, having lunch with our friends, or we're helping out a colleague, or we're mentoring, or we're volunteering, or anything where you're sort of sharing your energy, that you're doing it on your terms and not what like everybody else expects from you. And so when you do that, though, you have to understand that it's it's going to make you feel a little funny at first, but eventually it allows you to avoid the shame and guilt, because if you're doing things on everybody else's terms, and then one day you wake up and somebody wants you to do something but you don't want to do it, you feel shame and guilt. But it was because it was on their terms and not yours. Okay? The last one is to talk to yourself and give inner permission. I talked about that a little bit earlier, right? So the mind likes to show up with shame and guilt, and your job is to not necessarily be like, shut up, mind, stop making me feel guilty or bad. But your job instead is to learn how to talk to yourself in these moments. And that is not the yelling at the mind and telling the mind to stop what it's doing, but more so going back to this place of connecting with yourselves, like, hey, like if I'm talking to myself, hey, Miss Melissa, I'm feeling some shame and guilt, but I just want you to know that I have taken the step in the direction of which I thought you wanted to go. I'm trying to fulfill your desires. And I just want you to know that whatever those desires are, I still love you. I'm still here for you. I'm not abandoning you. I'm going to be with you through this no matter what. And then that puts you in a position where you can kind of ease the shame and guilt through your soul versus trying to get your mind to just stop, right? And then you can kind of talk yourself through, even like, hey, if I'm talking to myself, hey, Miss Melissa, which is my soul, I just want you to know that you have full permission to express yourself as you wish. I don't judge it. If you're something you want, if there's something you desire, I love that. And I'm going to do the best I can to execute on that, or get the mind to execute on that. And we're going to figure out who we need to ask for help. We're going to figure out who we need to communicate with. Like, I just want you to know that you have my full permission to express yourself as you see fit, because I love you and I accept you. And I know if it's a desire coming from you, that it's coming from you, and we need to try to give it a go. And so what this does is it kind of battles that shame and the guilt without going straight to the mind and just having this experience where inevitably you're going to probably like, you're inevitably going to not probably win that battle. Do you know what I'm saying? Because the mind is very powerful, very strong. And when it wants you to feel a certain way so that you fit in, so that you don't die, etc., it has a very strong power in how it operates. And so trying to shut it down, make it shut up, not let it throw its fit, trying to make it stop, trying to make it controlled is sort of a losing battle. And what is a winning battle or winning solution or winning equation versus that is more so this idea of like making your soul feel fully comfortable that what it is you want, desire, is fully accepted, fully loved, will not be abandoned, and creating this safe environment for your soul to truly want what she wants and have what she wants. So you have to learn to sort of talk to yourself. Okay. So yeah, that's all I got for this week. And I just wanted to talk through that because I think shame and guilt is a huge reason why people don't honor themselves. Shame or guilt is a huge reason why people don't just go for it when it comes to wanting what they want and having what they want. It's like why they hold back, and it's why they don't express themselves. It's why they don't share with others what they want. It's why they don't ask for help, right? So when you need something, you have to honor that need from the soul level and kind of figure it out from there versus the shame and the guilt coming in, and then you don't then you're not in a place of honoring yourself. And now you're twisted and contorted into a version of yourself you don't even recognize. You don't have what you want. You don't have the life you want. You don't have the relationships you want. You don't have the career you want. Everything is a little bit just out of whack, right? And you're like, why is this happening to me? Well, because you tried when you were probably a little bit younger to kind of lead with this idea of fulfilling your soul's desires, but then over time it gets contorted and twisted and shamed, and then you end up feeling guilty for the things that you truly desire, and then you just stop. And when you stop, then you're in a place where you're not aligned with yourself. You don't have that relationship with yourself. You just completely shut it down. So, all right, guys. Well, I really appreciate you listening. I hope this helped. If it did, please feel free to forward it on to a friend, share it. Always hit me up on socials. I'm happy to hear from you and see what you think about this. And yeah, till next time, keep honoring yourself.